Yeah, so I'm going to start. Let's see, I'll share my presentation. All right, can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see the screen.
The presenter screen, I think.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, oh, I think I'll do it like this. All right, yeah, so I'll just start a little bit because you all subscribed for this lecture, but I thought I'd tell you a little bit about Atriensis, and then I'll tell you a little bit about myself and Gijs and my colleague Kira as well. Yeah, so Atriensis is a consultancy company for social housing corporations. Social housing is quite a well-known thing in the Netherlands. I don't know how it is abroad, but here it's quite common that people live in a social housing house, and then they pay relatively low amounts of rent for a well-preserved house usually. So we do a lot of things. We advise the companies about a broad variety of questions. For example, we have people that help inspect houses to see which energy label fits that house. But we also do sustainability projects. We do research, which Kira does a lot about, for example, governmental questions or policy-related questions. And we're also very active currently in the energy transition because social housing corporations have quite many houses overall in the Netherlands. And well, the government thinks that if they actually start this energy transition, that it will become a success more quickly, because then we'll have more scale and then the cost will hopefully decline. Atriensis has 3 locations with approximately 115 employees. We work from Eindhoven, our head office, and then we have 2 offices, one in Zwolle and one in Amstelveen near Amsterdam. So, well, you also saw Kira, but Gijs and I are going to tell you something today about the projects that we do. But if you have any questions to Kira about, if you want to ask her a question about maybe policy-related research, then she's also here. So don't hesitate to ask her questions as well. So Gijs, maybe you can give a small introduction.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Gijs. Some of you might know me. I'm currently sort of a working student at Atriensis. It's a side job. But I'm involved with the 3IV concept, which is a sustainability program, and I help analyze the portfolios of social housing corporations there. And now you, Maria.
Yeah, my microphone didn't want to work, so I'll just I'll do it like this. And now it's okay. Wait 1 second. Sorry. Let's do it like this. Yes. No. Okay, let's do it like this. Yes. All right. So yeah, my name is Maria Scholte. I'm sorry about the technical issues. I recently graduated from the TUE. I started my job at Atriensis in February, and I graduated from Innovation Sciences in December. And I'm working as a strategy consultant, sustainability, and I'm very much involved with the energy transition. And I'm doing all those projects. So first, we want to do a small quiz. Let's see. I have some issues with my screen, so I'm going to think about how I can solve this, because I can't see my second screen. Let me see. 1 second. I'll do it like this, because otherwise I can't also share the questions that we have prepared for you. So the first question that we have is, how many social housing corporations are active in the Netherlands? So I'll put it in the chat, because we thought that it would be nice. Tom gave us a tip that we could, oh, it's a very weird font, but that you could just hover over it and then you can decide whether it's a thumbs up or a heart, or you can use those emoticons to answer the question. So how many social housing corporations do you think are active in the Netherlands? I don't know if you can... Let's see, I see 1 heart and I see a smiley. So one person thinks 80, the other thinks 300. Yeah, different responses. Okay. Now some disappeared again, but I think I can safely say when I see your answers that, well, you might not really know exactly how many housing corporations are active. So I'll help you. I'll answer the question. It's about 300. So actually there are a lot of social housing companies in the Netherlands that provide housing for those who need it. So now I want to go into the energy transition aspect of our work. An important global challenge that I think no one has missed anymore, you hear about it all the time, is the energy transition. Because of course we emit too much CO2 and we need to do something about it. And an important aspect of this CO2 emission is how we live. So we cook on gas, we heat our houses on gas, and to decrease the amount of CO2 that we emit, we think that a very important challenge is to actually make a change in how we heat our houses, how we live. So the Netherlands has set this goal that there will be no more natural gas use by 2050, or at least very, very little, because some places it might not be possible, but in general, no more natural gas by 2050. To achieve this, they set up some proeftuinen, that's what they call it, which are basically pilots. And these are projects in certain neighborhoods where they test different solutions that might be a good solution for replacing natural gas. So an example of such replacements is a heat pump, or the use of biogas, or district heating. And district heating is mainly what I want to talk to you about today, because that's the type of project that I'm involved in. So what we want to do at Atriensis is to find the most affordable, sustainable, and comfortable solution for our residents. So it's not only about just getting them to lose the natural gas connection to their house, but we want to think about their whole issue and how we can help them in the best way. Because the residents that live in social housing, they actually are the most vulnerable groups in society. So we really think that they are the people that we need to do best for, because even though they might be one of the first groups that go off this natural gas, they shouldn't be the ones paying for it. So that's what we at Atriensis do. So that's what I'm going to tell you about right now. But I think, because I already said something about that there are quite some social houses in the Netherlands, I think it's relevant to ask you which percentage of Dutch houses is owned by a social housing corporation. So Gijs, maybe you can send the question in the chat, because my screen otherwise will will fail again. I see he's typing. Yeah. So what do you think? How much of our houses is owned by a social housing corporation? I see thumbs up. I see smileys. I see a surprised face. So I see two people think it's 30%. One person thinks it's 50%, and three people think it's 15%. Yeah. So I think I already gave it away that it's not 5%, since I said it's quite many, but actually it's nearly 30% of houses is owned by a social housing corporation. So then you can see that we can really achieve scale in the energy transition if we get those houses to go off natural gas. So one way to go from natural gas to another more sustainable solution is district heating. You might have already heard of it. In Dutch, it's known as stadsverwarming, and it is a collective solution. And you can see it in the picture on the right. You can see, for example, you can see a factory which produces well, it doesn't really matter what it produces, but usually when it produces something, it also produces heat. And with this residual heat, they can also use that heat to heat some water that can then flow to houses that are usually quite near that factory, and then that factory can heat those houses. So this is quite a sustainable solution to use the residual heat, for example, from industry, and then it doesn't go to waste. And it's a collective solution because there's one source, and all those houses, they have one big tube that goes in the ground, and then all those houses are connected by smaller tubes to actually use that warm water to heat their house. But not only factories can be used as a heating source. For example, you can also burn biomass, or you can use heat from the earth, which is known as geothermal heat. Or you can also use heat from, for example, rivers, which is known as aquathermal heat. And you can even use sewage water to heat houses. But then, of course, you have clean water that goes in your house. Yeah, so an important aspect of this district heating is that you have a heat supplier who owns the tubes in the ground. And usually that's the same supplier that also supplies you the heat. So there's only one supplier that connects you to the heating system, and you can't differentiate between people that offer you this heat. So for example, for gas and electricity, you can, but in the case of district heating, that's not possible because there's just one tube and one source that provides you with the heat. So I also wanted to give you a little bit of an impression of what this looks like and how invasive it is. So if you have district heating, it's actually a very invasive thing because they have to just go into the ground and put these really large tubes in that move the water to the houses, and then another tube that takes the water back to the factory or the other source that's used for the heat. You can see that in a picture on the top right, you can see men in a street, and you see the houses, and next to the houses immediately the whole ground is open and there are so many tubes and wires, so it's very complicated. And actually the picture in the bottom right I took this weekend when I just walked in Amsterdam and I saw that they were doing this. So you can see that that's a very big project that asks quite a lot of the public streets, but also of the people that live there. So you might be curious also about how much this costs, because you can see that it's a very big project. And one of the first things that I think for you also as construction and building environment students is relevant is at Atriensis, and that's something that we also share with our clients, that it's very important to differentiate between apartment buildings and single family homes. Because as you can see in the previous pictures, there are these giant tubes that go in the ground as like the general network. But if you have single family homes, you have to put a tube through the front yard of every single family home to connect them to this network. And if you have a big apartment building, you only need one big tube that just goes up all the apartments through smaller tubes. So that should actually be cheaper. And this is something that's very important for social housing companies because they tend to have more apartment buildings. So then it becomes cheaper for them to connect them to the district heating network. So what does it actually mean for people and in their homes when they get connected to such a network? Well, first of all, in the home, tubes come in, and you can see in the top right, you can see this thing that is known as the delivery set. And the tubes are then connected to this delivery set, and this delivery set then provides heating to the radiators in the home, and it also provides drinking water, hot water for when you want to shower, those kinds of things. An important difference is that usually in the Netherlands, at least, most people have this thing that is known as a central heating boiler. So they have their own installation that heats up water and that provides them with drinking water, or not drinking water, but hot water to shower, and hot water that goes through their radiators to heat their house. But when you go to district heating, you can imagine that the heat that comes off, that the factory delivers, might not be close to boiling. So the temperatures are lower, than they used to be when people had their own central heating boiler. Because that's, of course, also more sustainable, because you need less electricity or less gas to make the water as hot as before. So you can actually, that also saves a lot of energy. But then, I think you know that better than I do, because you're more construction, you know more about construction and those technical things. But the thing is that when the temperature goes down, things in the house need to change, because the house, of course, still needs to be nice and warm, because in social housing also a lot of old people live there, and it's very important that they still feel comfortable, and that their house gets hot enough. So one thing to do that can help is to do an insulation project, of course, so then the heat doesn't escape as easily as it did before. But another thing that we do a lot is to calculate inside the house, if the radiators that are currently there, if they are if they become hot enough when the temperature that goes in there goes down. And if not, then we advise to replace those radiators and to make a very good home insulation so that it becomes hot enough. Another thing that I didn't know when I started working here was that when people that live in these social housing homes, that it's very important that they really don't get any extra costs from when they go from natural gas to a district heating network. And one way to do this, or how we do this, is to give them, for example, a cooking stove that's electric. We give them cookware, such as pots and pans. But if people use electrical cooking devices, you, of course, also need more electrical capacity, because otherwise the electrical network will shut down and it won't work. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about when you go from gas to another solution, because it might ask something of the electricity network. In the house, changes need to be made. And that's something that a lot of people might forget. You may have also heard about that there's a lot of discussion going on about heating networks, because there's a question about affordability. When I talk to people that live in a social housing home, they always say, like, oh, I read this in the news that everyone who's connected to this network pays a lot of money and I don't want this. And they are very stressed about it. So even though the district heating is now the most cheap alternative to natural gas, it is still very much a worry that people will pay more. So that's also what we always advocate. We always we discuss with the heating companies how much they will charge and that their services will be good, because otherwise people will definitely not agree to be connected to this network. This is extra important because there's only one heat supplier, which I already explained. So there's a monopoly that you can speak of. So people cannot say, like, oh, I'm not happy about the services that they provide, or I think the prices are too high, so I'll just go to another supplier. That's not possible in this case. So we really have to be very much aware of the threats that it poses when you connect those very vulnerable groups to district heating. So this is a very important point of attention for Atriensis and also for everyone that's involved in this project. Another question that arises, is it a comfortable solution? Well, that's very much a technical question, and I tried to explain it in the previous slide. I think if you make the right technical adjustments, then it is a very good solution. But I think many companies are not aware that in the home, changes need to be made as well, especially when there are older people, that they still need to feel comfortable in their home. So this is also something that we very much focus on. And lastly, another discussion point is whether it's a sustainable solution. And I already talked about factories and biomass and heat from the earth. And I think you've also heard about the discussion whether biomass is actually sustainable. So I think it very much depends on the source, whether it's a sustainable solution. But what we do in our projects is always keep in mind and think about what other options there might be in the future. So even if the current source might not be very sustainable, we always make sure that we know that there will be an alternative in the future that will be sustainable. And we discuss this with all our stakeholders. So there really is a lot of discussion. And that's also the main takeaway I wanna give you, is that in my job, I talk to many different people. So I talk to people who live there. I talk to the municipality. I talk to the network companies. I talk to the heat suppliers. I talk to the social housing corporations themselves. So it's a very broad variety of stakeholders that you need to think about and that you need to make happy. But in the end, it's always about the actual people who live there, the people who rent the house, and they need to be in a comfortable house, in an affordable home, and it needs to be sustainable in the future as well. So I hope that maybe we can discuss later if you have any questions. Gijs will also now tell you something about what he's working on, and then we can go into a bit of discussion.
All right, thanks, Maria. Let me just request control here.
Yeah.
All right, I think I got it. All right, so I'm going to do quite the opposite of what Maria just told you about, because I'm going to talk about the 3FA, which is a sustainable and affordable renovation program. And we developed this for cases where district heating is not possible or not feasible. Yeah, let's just get into it. So there are of course some challenges, and the origin of this concept results from a moment where Atriensis and some subcontractors we have just sat together and discussed the whole issue around sustainability. And what we concluded was that there's large differences between municipalities, for example, but in general the sustainability process is very slow. And the current status quo, so to say, for existing buildings is very expensive and difficult. It's called NOM, that stands for nul de meter, which is a type of renovation where the outer skin of the facade is taken away and then replaced by a new layer which supposedly insulates better. But as you can imagine, this is quite an invasive process, which of course makes it expensive and difficult. So we tried to come up with an alternative, and this was done. So we went for an all-electric home with insulation within the cavity, so no extensive facade renovations. So this concept consists of, well, mostly a competitive budget. Because that's what we wanted to start with. We wanted to make it a lot more feasible for social housing corporations to actually take part in this renovation. And therefore we set a competitive budget of 50,000 euros. And within that budget, we strive to get the best available materials and installations. And then there's of course also the issue of which dwellings to focus on, because we can't do all of them. As Maria already mentioned, apartment buildings are just not that interesting for this concept, because district heating is very interesting for apartment buildings. But also not all houses are very well, easy to renovate in this way. So we selected a few. These are the single family and elderly homes within a specific construction year between 1970 and 1992. And there are some other requirements, which basically result from the fact that we need a cavity, otherwise we can't install insulation measures, and we need an attic, because otherwise you can't install a heat pump in there. And then of course the floors also has to be strong enough for that heat pump. But the most important factor here is of course that it's not in a district heating zone. And then to analyze all of this, we use the municipal start analysis, which you can see on the right. This is analysis by the municipality, which indicates which zones are going to get district heating, which zones are going to be designated as all electric zones, and some pieces are going to get biogas. And then based on that and the databases we get from the housing corporations, we are able to select the most viable homes, and then we can contact those housing corporations. All right, you probably know these kind of buildings. Some of you might have lived in there, or alternatively, your grandparents might live in there. So these are the types of homes. Now you get kind of get the idea. There's quite a lot of these homes in the Netherlands, as you will see later. Okay, so let's get a bit more into detail. Within the renovation program, there's a few very important things. That's mostly insulation, floor insulation, roof insulation, and cavity insulation. And then we insulate these parts very well. And also very important is the airtightness. Because of the heat pump, we also need, the heat pump is also a low temperature heat delivery system. So as you can imagine, if the building is not sufficiently airtight, you will get a very drafty house, and that of course you don't want. And Maria, I think, explained this very well before. Furthermore, we also disconnect the houses from the gas, and that's something that, for example, in Groningen is a very attractive option for the occupants. You can probably imagine why. And furthermore, we also renew the ventilation system a little bit with demand-driven grids for the air supply. But this also helps with the air tightness issue while still maintaining a very good ventilation level. All right, so just a quick pop quiz in between. What do you think would be the annual average energy consumption of such a dwelling? Place your bets in the chat. Not seeing any bets yet, but okay, we got the first one, 90 kilowatt hours. There's 3 of them actually. Okay, one person voting for 80 and one for 70. All right, let's go to the answers, I think. 70. And I'll explain why it is so low. Well, not explain why it is so low. You you see you've seen the measures we take, but 70 kilowatt hours per square meter is a very important figure to reach, because the future standards, it's called the standard, for renovation of houses, actually demands that you get it this low. Otherwise, you can't, for example, ask for certain subsidies, and your renovation might actually be disapproved by the municipality. So it's quite important that we know beforehand how well our house is going to perform. Otherwise, it will be very hard to convince the municipality, the housing corporation, and also the occupants that this renovation program can really work. And then again, for the occupants, as Maria already mentioned, it's very important for them that their living costs will remain the same or possibly even be lower. Of course, they're disconnected from the natural gas, which is a big benefactor. But they also receive coaching through an app within this concept, because it's important that they learn to live with their new home. So they know not to open their windows when they leave home, because that will that will not be beneficial for their heat pump. And again, there's the same points of attention as Maria mentioned. The heat pump is a low temperature delivery system, so air tightness is very important. And therefore it also always has to be checked. And actually this check is kind of a big issue right now. It's a large challenge, because the air tightness has to be checked for each individual home. And then, as you can imagine, that's going to be quite expensive if you have to do that for several thousands of homes. Also, it's of course a relatively quiet renovation. You don't have to take away the entire facade, but it's not nothing. So it will take a week before your home is going to be renovated. So occupants have to be very aware of this, and we do our best to provide them with all the necessary information for that. Then for housing corporations, this slide will probably be the most interesting. As I mentioned before, we set a competitive budget. Well, you can see that the non-renovation costs somewhere around 100,000. We offer 3V for 50,000, and that's just a set price. So if we can do it for a lot less, then we just make more profit. But if we in the end go slightly over budget, then that's also on our plate. And then at the side you can see a more classical label B renovation. This is a bit less well known, but it's basically similar to 3V, except they don't disconnect the houses from the natural gas, which is in the end will have to happen anyway. So therefore it's probably better to do this at once. Also, we have some organizational innovation. If a housing corporation gets on board, we can take care of the whole process. So we offer a full service to them. If they say yes to 3V, we basically take care of everything. We have the subcontractors in every region. There's a sounding board where they can voice their opinions. And we, of course, calculate and coordinate the whole concept and the process. And of course, we also do the subsidy requests and the contract and so on. So really, it's making sure that the corporations don't have to worry about those kind of things, which really makes it a lot quicker and also more attractive to those corporations. Then I've spoken a lot about how many houses we can do this for. But how many dwellings do you think are viable for this type of renovation? I think you can use the information you know so far to place an educated guess. All right, I see a vote for 350,000. One more. Also, one person saying 250,000. All right, yeah, it's actually work. Yeah, okay, it's actually 350,000 dwellings. So I'll show you the calculation as well. So there's 950,000 single-family homes within the social housing corporation sector, about which 37% was built in the acceptable period, and that already gets you the answer. This is about 15% of all corporation dwellings, which you can imagine is quite a lot. And together with the district heating solutions, we also offer Atriensis is trying to do its part within the whole energy transition of the Netherlands. So as you can see, we have quite a large potential, but also we have some ambitions. We want to lower the costs even more through a bit more innovation and of course scale, because we can buy in bulk with these set contractors. This is very beneficial, and this also drives prices down. And also we want to use more bio-based materials and also do more with greenification of neighborhoods, because we do whole neighborhoods at once. We move away from the traditional, we do one project at a time and then move on to the next one. No, instead we go to a corporation and say, you have several thousand of these type of dwellings. Would you like us to do them all in one project? And then they of course have to invest quite a lot, but also the results will show very quickly. Right, and then finally I've come to the end of the more technical part. There's of course also some job opportunities at Atriensis, mostly for master students, but also some internships. You can do your graduation project here, and also there's lots of vacancies for junior project consultants, in which case you could be working alongside Maria. So if you are a master student, check the website, or you can just immediately contact the recruiter, Suzanne van der Bomen. She's very nice. And then finally, I think any questions also about Maria's part, of course. If you have a question, you can just unmute yourself and go from there. Or type it in the chat if you're a bit more shy.
Let's
Right.
see. Yeah, this is always the exciting part, waiting for the questions.
Yeah, you never know if there aren't any questions, but maybe there aren't. In that case, I think thank you for your attention, and maybe see you in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, Maria, for explaining about the projects. They're both a very different approach to essentially the same challenge. So cool to see that even within the same company, you're tackling the challenge from two sides. Very much, very clear, very applicable. So that was very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. Yeah, if there's no questions, then it was clear indeed. That's fine, I guess. For the first year students, I will send a link to the Google Docs, to the Google Forms again for My Future activity. You know the drill already. And with that said, yeah, I cannot thank you enough, Gijs and Maria. And that was it. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.